You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Stand Tall and Own It. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and as I was out walking this morning in the misty rain, I was reminded of the fact that it is already autumn, and I am kind of excited about that this year. I normally am a spring-summer kind of person, but this summer was rough. I was sick a good bit, and now I'm really looking forward to new things coming. But as I was walking, I actually had red and yellow leaves falling on me as I was walking down this one cul-de-sac. And it was so beautiful. And I thought, I hope that you can find some beauty today in whatever it is that you experience. I don't normally start my podcast episodes this way, but I just wanted to share that with you because I think we can find beauty all around us. And as leaders, it's important to do that, especially in the people that we work with and that we serve and that we lead. And if you've stumbled into this podcast if you are new here, welcome. We are in episode number 2 of a 4-part series all about leadership. Because as I shared in the last episode, now these don't have to be listened to in sequential order. So again, if you're new, jump on in and there's some good stuff for you to learn today and some really good, I hope, encouragement and some good takeaways for you. But you could go back and listen to the last episode all about your role as a leader. And this is, like I said, it's part of a 4-part series, and we are heading into Live to Lead season. Between October 1st and February 28th of 2025, I'm sharing a premier leadership tool that will both inspire, encourage, both, and challenge you to be a better leader. I absolutely love that I get to take part of this as a Maxwell Team Leadership Consultant. If you're local to Central Virginia, especially the greater Charlottesville area, you can take part in a full-day live, in-person Live to Lead conference here in Charlottesville on Friday, October 18th. But keep an eye on my social media and my website because I'm talking to 2 different other locations that we could potentially do live in-person events before the end of February. If we do add any of those into our program, we'll put those in the show notes. But if you're not local or you'll not be able to attend in person, you can still get access to all of this amazing content through what we call LeaderPass. It's a 5-day virtual on-demand access to the Live to Lead 2024 content featuring speakers that you will hear at Live to Lead Charlottesville and other speakers that are extra, as well as past speakers like Marcus Buckingham, Ryan Leake, Ed Milet, and Tim Elmore, who I mentioned in my Leading Across Generations podcast episode. I've included that link in the show notes as well, because this is just such an amazing value. So in this 4-part series, we're going to hone in on leadership. Last week, we looked at understanding your role as a leader. And today, we're going to look at something that I call the number 1 responsibility of a leader. I'm sure that there are other leadership experts out there, other leadership coaches that will disagree with me, but I think that communication is our number 1 responsibility as a leader. Now for this series, because I shared a minute ago, I am a Maxwell Leadership Team certified team member and executive team member, and I take all of my clients through this book called Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. Every single one of my executive leadership coaching clients go through this. It's also in the show notes. I'll make sure we have an updated link. The last time I looked, it was at 40% off on Amazon. This is the workbook style or the workbook edition of the book because I think that it's really important for us to apply what we learn immediately. And that's why I use the workbook edition rather than just the book, because sometimes we highlight and we make notes and we discuss, and then it goes back on the shelf. I have a whole shelf over here full of books that I've done exactly that with. This one I keep using. So as a reminder and to lay the foundation, just really quickly for where we are in this series, this particular workbook has 10 lessons on what the like what it means to be a good leader. And last week we looked at the definition of leadership, which is influence, as Maxwell says, plain and simple. It's the ability to obtain followers. And we walked through the 5 levels of leadership. If you listen to any of the John Maxwell podcasts, or if you go to any of the Maxwell corporate events, you're going to hear him talk about these 5 levels of leadership all the time. They are position. The first one is position. People follow you because they have to. And I went into these in detail in the last episode. So if you want the detail, you can go back or you can get the book. The second is permission. Level 2 is permission. They follow because they want to. The third is production. They follow because of what you've done for the organization. The fourth is people development. They follow because of what you've done for them personally. And pinnacle is number 5, and they follow you because of who you are and what you represent. So as you think through those and listen to the rest of what I have to say today, maybe kind of look at where you fall on that scale. Like what kind of leadership are you? What level of leadership are you in these areas that we're going to talk about today? And kind of why do you want to be a leader? Because if you don't know why you want to be a leader, then you may not be like moving into the level that you really want to be at to be the most effective leader in whatever organization or situation you're in. So today I said the most important responsibility of a leader is communication. And so that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at 2 main principles, I think. Are we looking at 2 or 3? I think we're just looking at 2. This is because I write my notes and then I have to go back and look at them. Why do I think it's the most important responsibility? Because no matter how smart, charismatic, strong, or gifted you are, which I'm sure you are all of those amazing things, you're never going to get others to follow, which is the definition of a leader, if you don't have the ability to communicate. If you can't communicate your vision, if you can't communicate your mission, if you can't communicate the benefit to them, if you can't communicate the results that they will get, none of it. If you can't even communicate encouragement and positive reinforcement on whatever it is they're doing, they will never follow you. So communication is that important of a piece. The topic of communication in general, though, is huge. It's broad, it's nuanced. We could have an entirely other podcast completely dedicated to the topic of communication. But today we're going to focus on leadership and why and how it is so important for a leader to understand and master the art of communication in 2 main areas of leadership. These are areas that can make or break you. These are areas that you could use tools for. There's lots of tools out there. I am a DISC consultant. I love using the tool of DISC to help people understand how to communicate and who they're communicating with and how best to do that. But we're going to look at just the principles today. We can look at tools another time, or you can DM me and ask me about some specific tools for either of these 2 pieces. The first is the ultimate test of a leader. And that's creating positive change. The essence of successful leadership is getting things done. I had a conversation with a friend recently, and even we talked about my 15-year-old son. He's going to be 16. I need to stop saying that. My son, my teenage son, is known for saying, "I'm working on it." And I'll say, "Did you bring this down? Did you make your bed? Are you getting dressed? Have you done your homework?" And it's always, "I'm working on it." Well, that's nice, but the result is what we measure the success of the actual task. It's great to be able to, in some areas of our lives, we do need to measure progress. We do need to measure our enthusiasm. We do need to measure the things that help us move forward. But if we don't have any results, then there's no evidence of true success. The essence of successful leadership is getting things done, yet how far you can travel isn't the point. It's how far you're able to take other people. Because as the African proverb says, alone we can go fast, together we can go far. And that's the goal of a good leader, is to go far together. It's to take other people. Otherwise, you're a sole contributor and you don't need to be a leader. Now, if you want to be a social media influencer and have millions of followers, that's a little bit different, but you still need to get them to follow you, right? So the ultimate test for you as a leader is your ability to affect positive change. This is tied directly to your ability to communicate, and not in like the rah-rah cheerleader way, but understanding the dynamics of the change needed, the time needed to accomplish it, how people think, and meeting them where they are. Look, I have never walked into a new leadership position where change wasn't necessary. And Maxwell shares an incredibly helpful acrostic in Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 to remind you how and what to communicate to facilitate change. And it's this cute little acrostic. It's called Plan Ahead. So let's look at that really quick. The P in Plan Ahead stands for predetermine the change that is needed. Like I said, I've never entered a new position where change wasn't evident. The need for change wasn't evident. And quite frankly, I've never been in a leadership position where I wasn't always looking to make things better. That may not be your style, but if you're interested in, you may not think that's your style, let me put it that way. But if you're interested in managing the status quo, that's not really leadership. That's management. And that's keeping the trains running on time and making sure everything stays the same. Someone else is leading and setting the standards. If that's what you're interested in, that's fine. It's just, that's not what I would consider leadership. Leadership is always looking to make things better. How do we make the trains run faster? How do we make the widget more clean? How do we make sure that, that our products get made more efficiently? Or how to make a process better? Always looking to make something better. So for planning ahead, the first thing you need to do is predetermine the change, whatever the change actually is, that needs to take place. The L in plan is laying out your steps. I finished an entire year of work with a speaking coach who was wonderful, but one of the things that she was really adamant about is that as speakers and as people who are trying to get our mission across or our ideas across to someone else or teaching someone else something, we have to remember that an expert or someone that something comes very easily to goes straight from, if there's A to Z steps, we skip and we go A to F to S to X to Z, right? Because we already know all of those other steps in between. We already understand the nuances of what it means to be able to move from A to F. A beginner, however, and this is what happens with a leader might be able to see the long term and know we can just go straight to A to Z, or we can go to A to F to J to Z. But a beginner needs all of them. A beginner needs A, B, C, D, E, F all the way through. And if you're not willing to lay out those steps and communicate those steps, your people are not going to be able to follow. The A in plan is adjusting your priorities. In the last episode, we talked about how this was the key to good leadership. So when you look at your priorities, you're looking at your role. So when communicating, you can't be invested so much in the outcome or the result. You have to be invested in what is the priority and how do we communicate that priority. For me, as a business owner, being in Live to Lead season means that other things have been placed on what I would call the dock, right? If my boat is going to go faster, then I have put a few things on the dock that are going to sit there and wait until I'm done with this particular trip, right? And then I will pick those things back up in my boat. Right now, if I had them all, trying to do them all, I wouldn't be able to focus. I had to adjust my priorities. The N in plan is notifying your key people. Which leaders can you identify in this group of people that you need to lead are already at level 3 or higher? I mean, level 2 is permission, but level 3 is, these are the ones who have poured into your people. So if they're already at a level 3 or higher, they're your influencers. These are the people you need to get on board first. These are the people you communicate your plan with first. For someone like me who is a very small team, all of my people are key people, but you as my audience are the people that I am leading through certain types of change. So I will talk immediately with my podcast producer about how I want to change the schedule or what I want a series to be on towards the end of the year. As a matter of fact, I have a really good idea. I can't wait to share it with you. But I'm not going to do that today. So notifying your key people means that if you look at, I mentioned tools a minute ago. If you look at a change curve. When you're trying to affect change in an organization, you have this traditional bell curve where on the very left at the bottom, you have these people who are the first adopters and they shoot straight up. These are your early adopters, the people who are excited about it. These are your key people. These are the ones that everybody else follows. And it may not even be someone who's in a leadership position, but it might be that sales guy that everybody aspires to be like, or it might be the committee chair that everybody really listens to because they respect them. You never know who that's going to be. So identify those people. And when you get on that change curve, they're the ones who will help you get over that hump to where you have your late adopters that will come along later. So that's plan. Predetermine the change, lay out your steps, adjust your priorities, and notify your key people. When we look at ahead, the very first one is A, allow time for acceptance. Everything takes longer than you think. Everybody needs some kind of proof that it's working. Maxwell puts forth this equation, and I like equations. A lot of times they help just kind of solidify pictures in my brain. But he says effectiveness is equal to quality times acceptance, meaning you have to get some quality results under your belt along the way. If that's steps A, B, C, D, and E before you can get to F, and you as a leader think you're supposed to get to F first, the quality of getting through those steps plus the acceptance of the people that are like your key people who are already there, that's going to give you effective traction. Don't rush things. Make sure you know that you have plenty of time to get things done. And as a leader communicating, I'm terrible about this. Like, I consider myself to be a fairly patient person, but when I'm ready to go, I am doggone ready to go. And I have to be very careful that even in my family, as I communicate, I don't rush them. I don't make it, because we make mistakes when we rush. We skip steps when we rush. We cut corners when we rush. And what you want is excellence. You want effectiveness and excellence and quality to come out. So give yourself time for the people to accept everything they need. The H in ahead is head into action. You got to look at your own level of leadership and then call them to action. What happens is when people want to follow you, they will actually do what you ask them to do. So it may be that you have to do a couple of steps first to show them the results that are going to come, but this will prove to them and it will prove to you that you've actually got them on board as with you as their leader. So heading into action is the next step. Right after heading into action is E. You need to expect problems. I love this piece because for me, it's like risk assessment, risk management, risk abatement, whatever you want to call it. When you actually understand that motion causes friction, all motion causes friction. It doesn't matter if it's physical, it doesn't matter if it's emotional, it doesn't matter if it's relational or in an organization. You have to realize that there's going to be friction, and you as a leader have to see it, speak it, all of that, and just imagine the worst first. You have to be the one that sees the problem. You can't say, oh, no, that's not a problem. Well, but look here, leader, this is the problem. No, this is really, it's fine. Once you get to step F, it's going to be okay, or G, it's going to be okay. You've got to acknowledge that there are problems, and you've got to expect ones that you may not have anticipated, right? So the next piece is when you speak that first, then you as the leader will encourage them, those that you want to follow you and to present to affect change in your organization or in your community. This is going to encourage them that you're not being blind to what's going on. You actually you're paying attention, you're moving forward, and they know you're in this together. And then as you encourage them, the A in ahead is always point to successes. Positive reinforcement does so much more than you expect it to do. It would really be nice, and as a mom, I have thought this so many times. It would be nice if we had these perfect brains that were like supercomputers, and they are supercomputers. However, if you could put something in there once and have it stick, that would be amazing. How many times do you have to tell somebody before they remember something, right? In business, we talk about telling somebody 10 times before they purchase. We talk about even that 10 times for your kids. It's like how many times you have to tell them something before it like starts to click. It may take 50. When you're dealing with people who are afraid or in a situation that is uncertain for them because of change, they need even more success evidence. They need more encouragement and more times to be told. So communicating and pointing to the successes as you go helps with that friction, helps with the problems, helps with them moving into action. It's amazing what that will do for us. But then the daily review, the last letter in ahead is D, and the daily review of your progress will make all the difference in the world. I am not Agile certified. My brother-in-law is, but I love the idea that you start and you do a certain amount of work and then you evaluate it and then you change direction as necessary. Because as you work, you keep you keep changing the progress and you keep changing the direction so that you know you're going to the right place. Early on, when I would talk about this in like some really old podcasts, I would use and I'm probably gonna have to start using this more now because my son is in driver's ed, the idea that when you drive, you never hold the steering wheel really, really tight and make sure it doesn't move. You have to adjust for the road, the wind, other cars, and you keep your eye on the prize out there so that you can make minor adjustments with the steering wheel to get there. And this is basically what daily reviewing your progress will do. And Maxwell talks about 3 things that you can do as you daily review your progress. He says, talk about the change clearly. As you review the progress on a daily basis, what is clear about the change? What is clear about the problems, what is clear about the effectiveness, talk about all of that. But you can also talk about the change creatively. And I love this, getting outside the box and thinking about how this change is going to affect you in other ways and talking about the change continually. All of these things will, I hate to use the another wheel analogy, but will kind of grease those wheels to help remove that friction and help get things moving. So as a leader, communicating through the most ultimate test of creating positive change in an organization or a community is huge. And this speaks to the intentional optimism tenet of optimistic and being proactive. I think I shared this one last time. It says, preparation makes the journey easier. I promote a unity of vision and mission, and I'm willing to walk into any situation with my eyes wide open. And when you plan ahead, when you actually look at the change that's needed, the steps, the priorities, when you notify people, when you're allowing time for acceptance and taking action, expecting problems as they come and pointing to successes and reviewing your progress, all of those things mean that you can walk in to any situation as a leader with your eyes wide open. People will respect you for it more than you know. So my questions for you in this area would be, how well do you communicate with your people? If it's your family, if it's your community, if it's your audience, if it's your staff, if you're a sole contributor, maybe it's a team that you're on, you're still a leader on that team and you need to be able to communicate well. Do you trust them to carry the vision to the rest of the organization? When you talk with your key people, if it's, like I said, the committee chair or the one salesman who seems to be, everybody wants to emulate or follow in their footsteps, do you trust them to carry the vision to the rest of the organization? Last week, we talked about how trusting your people first is the thing that's going to make a difference for you. And so you have to be willing to trust them. But the third question I have for you in this area is, are you willing to do the work in order to best communicate that ultimate test of change? Because it is hard. And change is, there are entire college degrees dedicated to change agents and to doing things like that in organizations. So as a leader, if you can do even small positive changes using that plan ahead acrostic, you will make a difference. Now, the second aspect today I want to talk to you about in communication is just being extra. And it's what Maxwell calls the extra piece. It's your attitude. Now, before you stop me and say, Andrea, attitude isn't part of communication, stop and think for a second. Who do you truly admire? Most of the time, we admire the characteristics in people that have to do with their attitude. But I can hear you saying, but that's still not communication, isn't it? According to Albert Morabian, who came up with the 55-38-7 ratio, he's a body language expert. 55, and I know you've heard this, % of our communication is nonverbal. It's the way if you're watching me on YouTube or on video, it's the way I sit, it's the smile, it's the way I look in the camera, it's the hand motions that I make, it's whether or not I look up to the left or to the right, they all mean something. But the 55% is nonverbal, which is one of the reasons why I like to be on video, because I want to make sure that it's not just 45% of my communication that you hear. If that's on podcasts, I want you to see the other 55. 38% is vocal, the tone that we take, whether or not we go up at the end of a sentence and make it a question, or do we make it a question, right? All of these things matter, and that's our vocal tone. That also explains why my son, who loves peace and doesn't like confrontation, is very clear with me that when I take a very stern tone and I start speaking in staccato rhythms, he thinks I'm yelling. And that's not really what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter if I get really, really quiet. He knows I'm yelling. He knows that there is something in that vocal tone that he perceives as I'm in trouble, right? What does that leave for us? 7% is our words. So if you think it's just your words that you need to pay attention to when you communicate, you really need to re-examine that and think again. That's why I say the attitude we exhibit through our body language and tone is so important. It's 93% of our communication. Only 7% is words. Maxwell calls attitude the extra plus in leadership. We get to use it to our advantage or not. It's up to you. Good leaders understand that a positive attitude creates a positive atmosphere, which encourages a positive and productive response from others. Let me show you how, all right? When you adopt a whatever it takes attitude as a leader, there are 7 pieces that are going to fall into place for you. When you decide to say, all right, I'm going to change my attitude. I want my attitude to be something that contributes to that 93% of communication. And before I do that, I'm going to tell you, my husband is a South Carolina football fan. And we watch Coach Beamer, who, if you're in Virginia, yes, his dad was Frank Beamer, who was the Virginia Tech coach for a really long time. And famously Virginia Tech coach. But Coach Beamer is the most... he can have some really hard words to say. If they head into the halftime of a game and he knows that he'll say, we played abysmally. But here's the thing. We know what we have. We know how many reps we've put in this week. We know all these things. His attitude is amazing. When they won a game, he said, it's not just the 70 players that we have. There's 120 players on this team, and 50 of them are sitting back in South Carolina watching this away game. I think it was when they played Kentucky. And if you're not a football fan, I apologize for the analogy that may go, that might be something you're not interested in. But his attitude and the way he led with attitude it's huge. The Kentucky coach a couple of years ago made fun of his attitude with his players because he was so willing to get in there and be one of them and have an attitude that was positive. And now it's like become this thing between the two schools. It's really funny. It has to do with wearing dark sunglasses and turning your hat around backwards. But all that to say, it really, really matters. So what is a whatever it takes attitude? There's 7 things Maxwell identifies. The first is to disown your own helplessness. And like I just said with Coach Beamer, it's like, yeah, we played bad, but we know what we've got. And this has to do with proactivity, planning, and a positive attitude. When you're willing to be proactive, when you're willing to do just what I shared a minute ago in this positive, creating positive change piece, when you're willing to plan ahead, you're willing to have a positive attitude, you can disown your own helplessness. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you and with you. And when you're willing to do that and not be the victim, it will change your leadership style, I promise. Number 2 is take the bull by the horns. This was something my mother used to say, very, very Texas kind of analogy or colloquialism. You need to decide to do something and then just go for it. I have shared this many times. The biggest factor in me actually doing something and you actually doing something is you deciding to do it. So take the bull by the horns, decide to do something and go for it. The third aspect of whatever it takes attitude is to enter that no whining zone. The best antidote for no whining is to cultivate gratitude. We hear this all the time. We're heading into fall. We're heading into Thanksgiving here in the North American countries. And October and November are Thanksgiving for Canada and the United States. And, we think about it then, but we forget to have this cultivated attitude of gratitude throughout the entire year. And that is the best antidote to to whining and trust me, I love a good whine every now and again, but that doesn't get me anywhere. And that doesn't actually produce anything. It just makes me wallow. But when I cultivate gratitude, and I've had to do that a lot lately, it makes a huge difference. The fourth aspect is what he calls putting on a new pair of shoes. And I talk about this all the time. It's about perspective. It's about determining whether or not you're only looking at things from your own perspective or looking at them from someone else's. When you're willing to go on the other side of the fence or around the other side of the building or whatever and look at things from a perspective that is not yours, it will change your attitude. Number 5 is nurture your passion. Don't leave yourself out of that positive reinforcement idea. You have a reason you're doing what you do. If it's a job, you still have a reason, and maybe not the job you want, but if you're a leader, you have a reason that you want to lead. You have a reason that you want to perform well and to excel and to do well. So don't leave yourself out of that. You've got to positively reinforce your own attitude and your own passion by actually giving yourself some kudos and figuring out the things that about the work that you do or about your leadership. Or even for me, I know this is silly, but I am on a 131-day streak on Duolingo learning the Korean language. That's what I grew up with. And we spoke English, but I grew up in Korea. And for me, it's a little bit of a passion project. So I do that for myself every single day, which means I've done one thing for me. I also exercise. So it doesn't have to be a passion that's related to your work or to leadership. It could be something that actually supports you in order to be able to do the leadership that you have. Number 6 in the whatever it takes attitude aspects is exceed expectations. Yours and everyone else's. You have to know your gifts and then grow and look for opportunities to exceed expectations. People talk about in sales exceeding other people's expectations all the time. If you don't exceed your own expectations, if you don't say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it better than I expected, then you're not setting the bar very high, right? You're not encouraging yourself to go even higher. So look for opportunities to grow your gifts. And the last piece of the whatever it takes attitude is never be satisfied. Good leaders are willing to see what's possible and get inspired to go there. And then a good leader turns around and communicates that to everyone else. The attitude that we approach our leadership with matters. It can be begrudging. It can be, even if you've been thrown into it, even if it's something that you really didn't want, the attitude that you approach it with will communicate 93% of everything that you do and every piece of communication that you put out there. And then the way that you actually deal with the attitude piece, and something I shared last week, is this test, fail, learn, re-enter, or improve cycle that John Maxwell shared with us. And I shared last week how he re-recorded something for our Live to Lead because he saw that the test didn't work. It failed. And so he needed to learn from that and redo it or improve it. And when we're willing to test things out, be willing to fail, and learn from whatever it is that we made the mistake on. Like I've made so many mistakes especially as a new supervisor. I had one employee that I just butted heads with this person the entire time. They were close to retirement. I worked in a university. They were close to retirement. They did a job that was the same job description as everyone else, but because of who they supported, it just looked very different than everyone else. And I didn't appreciate that. And we had some altercations and some really rough times. But by the time they left, I looked at this person and I said, oh my gosh, I failed you. I should have sat down with you and learned from you what you do. And then it would have changed everything. And this person looked at me and said, yeah, that would have. So the things that we fail at, we need to learn from and then re-enter and improve. And so I started doing that better with the people that I supervised. And I don't have that same, now it kind of manifests itself in the way I work with clients. Even with my core values coaching clients, I've added a new meeting on the front of that so that I could get to know them as a person, get to know you to understand who you are before we dive into your core values. We can't just dive right in. I need to know you a little bit. So I'm really, really curious to hear how you will use this information today in your life. How are you going to communicate as a leader? What's your biggest challenge when communicating as a leader? What is your biggest challenge in your attitude as a leader? What about change. Is that a thing that, are you somebody who doesn't like change? Then we need to talk about that as far as being a leader is concerned. These are both very important factors when it comes to communicating as a leader. Do you need help stepping into either one of these responsibilities? If so, remember, it is Live to Lead season. If you're in Central Virginia, Live to Lead Charlottesville is right around the corner from the airing of this particular episode. And a LeaderPass could also be your answer. Either way, I am here to support you, and I want to hear from you. DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Email me at andrea@theintentionaloptimist.com. Send a reply back to my newsletter, or on YouTube, like and subscribe. And I just saw a thing where if you have less than 500,000 followers, which I do, and somebody watches it, and you can actually hit a hype button or something like that to actually put it on a new kind of leaderboard to help propel smaller YouTube channels like myself. So like, subscribe, and hype it if you're doing that. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, rate and review it, and make sure you follow. It's time to stand tall and own it. It's time to stand tall and own your number one responsibility as a leader, because the world needs more people like you. They need more curious, welcoming, and wise leaders who understand their core values, recognize their strengths, and live by a clear set of life principles with a great attitude and willing to facilitate change. This foundation of understanding your core values, your strengths, and living by principles enables you to lead with integrity, humility, and authority, all while bringing along and mentoring the next generation. That's what leadership is, even if it's not generational. When leaders truly know who they are, they stop imitating others and start defining their own set of principles and priorities, creating a path for sustainable, impactful leadership. Is that something that you desire? Do you feel like you're not having an impactful leadership journey right now? Do you feel like your leadership is not sustainable? When you embody your unique values, it will inspire you and empower others to do the same, fostering diversity and authentic leadership across generations. That's what we're here for. I am so excited to bring this 4-part series to you. Our next episode in our leadership series is all about setting you and your team up for success. This is where fostering diversity and authentic leadership will come into play. I can't wait to share it with you. Until next time.